Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for choosing to join us today. We're excited to be walking through this exciting platform and integration with one of our favorite partners, JazzHR. We'll also explore how Verified First integration with JazzHR's comprehensive platform benefits your organization. Now, before we dive in, just a couple of very quick housekeeping items for you, just so you know this session is being recorded. Really, that's for your advantage here. So we'll be sending you a copy of that recording after this webinar concludes so that you can share it with any colleagues of yours that you feel might get value out of what we talk about today. There's also a Q&A panel and questions and chat functionality on the side here. So as we go along, if you have any questions or comments, concerns around anything we're discussing today, feel free to drop that in, and at the end of our discussion, we'll go ahead and have some time for those questions. If by chance we're not able to get to your questions, we will make sure to reach out to you within a couple of hours of the webinar concluding, but hopefully we will have enough time for that today. Now, as we get started, I just want to take a quick second here to introduce just who's talking today. It's always nice to put some faces to names. So I'm the partner manager here at Verified First. My name is Jessica Rowe. I manage all of the kind of marketing, co-marketing initiatives between Verified First and JazzHR. With me, I have Veronica Ferrato and Jen Smits. Veronica, hello, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing good. It's a really good Tuesday. So it's Tuesday, right? Yes, Tuesday.
Who knows?
At least time. No, I'm doing great. Thank you so much, Jess.
Yeah, thank you, Veronica, for joining us. And Jen, how are you doing? Maybe you can tell us a little bit about what your role looks like at JazzHR.
Sure, yeah, I'm doing great. Veronica, I'm with you. I was off yesterday, so today definitely feels like a Monday. But at JazzHR, I just oversee the tech partnerships, any kind of integrations that we have, work with Verified First very frequently, and work with other assessment providers and other providers in the space.
Awesome. Well, we're super excited to have you joining us here today, Jen. Thank you for taking the time to join our discussion. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, before we dive in, I just want to take a couple of moments here to explore and talk a bit about JazzHR and Verified First and essentially why we came together. So we came together with JazzHR to provide you with the easiest, most efficient way to be able to effectively screen employees all from within JazzHR's robust platform. So the ease of use here is really for your benefit and advantage. And that's, why we came together, what our partnership really does for you. So we're excited to share that with all of you today. And Jen, I know there's some exciting details here about JazzHR. Would you like to share those with the audience today?
Yeah, sure. With JazzHR, we are up to over 8,500 customers, which is pretty exciting. When I started about 3 years ago, we were around 5,000 customers. So pretty cool to see all of that growth happening. We have tons of partnerships in the space, and I know that we reached the 700,000 employees hired by JazzHR mark, which was pretty exciting as well. Once again, crazy just to see the numbers that are happening now compared to when I started with us 3 years ago. So super exciting progress. And we are now also joined forces with JobVite and Next Thing RPO, if you're familiar with them as well. So just continuing to grow and serve HR and recruitment.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Jen. And again, Jazz is one of our favorite partners, so we're always excited about the opportunity to do co-marketing and fun initiatives and projects with you guys. Well, cool. Veronica, as we prepare to transition into our first poll question, don't worry, there's only 2. This is not a pop quiz for everyone. Maybe you can frame this up for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited about this poll question. So in the world of background screening, something that we've learned is that our clients tend to feel that the biggest barriers to background screening are time and money, which makes a lot of sense. And I think that's always a concern for any organization out there. And right now, we're in a pretty turbulent time where employers need to hire really quickly, but the job market is also super tight. So some organizations may forego the whole screening process altogether to get employees in the door as quickly as they can and to minimize cost. But there's also the impression that implementing a background check solution may take time to implement and train the staff to do it, which is another deterrent, and then the cost that can factor into the conversation as budgets become more constrained. So as a result of that, what we found is that many organizations actually decide to gamble and take the risk of not screening, even though that there are options out there, such as what we have with JazzHR rather, and Verify First, that are both affordable and convenient.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really great to get the context behind that about why organizations don't screen. You know, they do take those risks, and oftentimes, unfortunately, it doesn't work out in their favor. So it's always good to know that an organization is protected from those types of adverse risks. Well, from you in the audience joining us today, we would love to get your engagement and your input on this question here. Just a fun little participation piece for us here. So I'll go ahead and launch this. It should show up on your screen. The question for you today is, how many US drivers are arrested for driving under the influence of alcohol or narcotics annually? So it's always interesting to get everyone's input on this. I know when we saw the responses and answers the first time, it can be a drastic difference from maybe what people think initially. So Jen or Veronica, do you have any insights around this or initial thoughts?
I'm actually kind of scared because I always tend to think, you know, of best case scenarios. So I'd like to think that that the answer is going to be less than 50,000. But at the same time, I feel like, unfortunately, that might be higher. So I don't know. I guess we'll see what the answer is here shortly. Curious to know what the audience thinks too. What about you, Jen?
Yeah, agreed. I would like to believe that it doesn't happen that often, so that less than 50,000 would be ideal when I think about how many people are in the country, how many of them are eligible to drive, how many of them actually drive. 50,000 still seems like a lot, but I'm sure it's probably one of those middle answers. I don't know. I'm interested to see.
Absolutely. It's one of those bets where you're like, all right, we're hoping for the best here. Well, let's go ahead and share the results really quickly, just see where those of you joining us today are at. So it looks like by a large shot, the popular answer here is 200,000. So with that, let's go ahead and actually transition into this next slide here, given what everyone's responses have been. Veronica, can you share your thoughts around this?
I mean, 1 million is a pretty staggering number there, considering that's also just in the United States, right? So to me, my brain is kind of boggled there, knowing that happens that often. So, I mean, but here's an example of what you would probably like to know about your employees, right? I mean, again, most of us probably feel that that most people are good, and that you know, we won't find anything on their background check that may make us feel concerned about bringing them on into our organization. But with this kind of thing being the reality, and not even just, you know, you think about outside of driving under the influence of alcohol or narcotics, but other types of crimes out there, it's pretty nerve-wracking to know that someone probably, or I wouldn't say probably, but could have a checkered past. And if you don't look into it, then you have no idea what kind of person you're bringing on. So I'm personally floored by that number. I'd be curious to know if that number may eventually go down. You know, maybe someday we do this, pull this information again in a few years, and hopefully it would be under 1 million, hopefully significantly. That's my hope for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a staggering number, especially given that most people thought it was 200,000. I know when I first saw this, I was like, oh, there's no way it's over 50,000. So again, staggering numbers, and really just goes to show the importance of background screens, that, you know, this is not something that people shout from the rooftop when they get a DUI. They don't go into work the next day and shout to everyone, hey, everyone, I got a DUI. That's, you know, oftentimes it's kept under wraps. So in addition to driver's record checks and background screening, Veronica, can you share with us a couple of other common screens, or maybe even examples that might provide more insight into someone's character or even possible offenses they might have?
Yeah, absolutely. So something to know about Verified First is the list of services that we provide is pretty comprehensive and detailed. I mean, we like to make sure that our clients are able to find any information that's relevant for them to know before hiring someone. whether it's based on location, industry, size of organization, what the role is. So among drug testing, for example, we are also providing like sex offender searches and nationwide criminal searches. So, and to think that, a lot of people are moving around in the country right now. So we have a lot of people that are deciding to move back home now that the pandemic is hit, or maybe they're wanting to start fresh somewhere else. And so some people may have a history there that they're bringing along with them. And while it may be a fresh start for them, the company still has a right to know what kind of path that they have, as they've lived anywhere else in the country. So our searches, we make sure that we provide services that are able to cover the entire US, so you're completely aware of any activity that that person has had in other states. And an example of this, one thing I'd like to call out is nonprofits, right? So when I think about nonprofits and them screening, we actually had an instance where a nonprofit came to us and told us that they had hired someone who was an instructor for children, and they did not screen them because nonprofits, they usually have a super tight budget. So it's understandable that at first they would think, oh, maybe we'll just kind of go with our gut on this and get the feeling for the person. Turns out that the person they hired had a previous sex offense, and they had been working with children for that company. So they came to us desperate for a solution to help them avoid that kind of situation in the future, which is something we should all be thinking about, right? I think it's important for us to consider how we can avoid that rather than land in hot water and then have to figure out what to do from there. Because the thing with this nonprofit is if they had not corrected it, they could have been slammed with some hefty fines, and then having to go through the whole rehiring process costs more money as well. So it'd be better for you to know everything up front. At least that's what I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with vulnerable populations like children, like the disabled or the elderly, it is important to thoroughly vet those candidates or even volunteers in the nonprofit space, knowing that, these people depend on the volunteers and the workers in those spaces to be credible and with their safety, really. So great that you mentioned that. Thank you for sharing that example, Veronica. And like she mentioned, we offer over 100 different searches. So don't worry, I'm not going to bore you today with listing all of them out. I will leave that up to you. If you have individual needs, we know that everyone has a case-by-case unique needs basis. So our team really works with you to craft and build together something that's going to work with your individual needs and not just provide a package deal where you don't even use half of them. So that's one of the neat things about Verified First here. As we know, a lot has changed in the last year and really over the last year, 2 years at this point, including organizational needs. So don't worry, this is the last poll question for the day, but we would love to get your input on this. So we'd be interested to hear what all of you think with this particular question. So I'm going to launch the poll here, and it is one of those select all type of questions. So what areas of technology are you looking to either adopt or replace within the next year? And the options here are, your volunteer management system. This could also be volunteer management or applicant tracking system, customer relationship management, background screening, assessments, or maybe you're not considering any replacements at this point in time. But we'd love to hear from you what your feedback is here. And it's also interesting, we'll share this here shortly as to where your peers are at in this system. Alrighty, well, I'm going to close the poll here and just really briefly share the answers so we can get an idea of everyone's responses. It looks like by and large, the biggest area where people are considering adopting or replacing their technology in the HR tech stack is background screening. The other runner-up is assessments or no replacement. So interesting to hear those of you who are considering replacing or adopting background screening. We're happy to have those conversations with you and really just discuss your individual needs here. So again, thank you for participating in that. And, as part of our study that we did recently in 2021 with Aptitude Research, we covered a couple of different ways that screening impacts organizations. Veronica, can you expand on that for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's look at the results here that you get from implementing a background screening solution. So you're 2 times more likely to improve quality of hire, 3 times more likely to improve time to fill, and 2 times more likely to improve recruiter satisfaction, which is a big one. Let's be honest about that. If y'all know how hard your recruiters work, so let's make sure that they're happy doing their job. So we mentioned previously about why companies don't screen, right? So these results below here, I think, all provide solid and compelling reasons for why you should be screening. So seeing the results of the poll is actually kind of encouraging, because our whole goal here today is to educate you on the importance of background screening while also considering some of the barriers that you may be facing, right? So a particular note of those results that I want to call out is that time to fill stat, which may seem kind of counterintuitive at first glance because you're adding an additional layer to the recruiting process. But this really shows how background screenings can help organizations focus on the right candidates and get them in the seat faster. So by being able to see their background check and knowing that they're clear and there's no concern for them, you can quickly move them forward and know with confidence that as they go through your hiring process that there won't be any I should say hurdles or setbacks from finding something out too late, right, in the process and having to start all over again.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting talking about time to fill and the effect that background screening has on that. The wide perception of it is that as an additional step, background screening really slows down that process. But if you look at the data behind it, background screening, and especially with our SMS technology here at Verified First, it actually shaves off an average of 8.6 hours on the candidate response time. So if you think about that in the work week kind of mentality, that's over a full workday that you're now expediting the candidate response time. So it's numbers and data like that that really drives home not just the importance of background screening and the positive impacts that that has on your organization and the longevity of employees there, but also the timing of that and increasing, you know, when you're able to fill that particular role. So thank you for going over that. Well, excited about this data here. Let's go ahead and shift gears here. Veronica, would you like to share the JazzHR platform with us and dive into, you know, how the integration works and, you know, what that looks like firsthand?
Yeah, I would absolutely love to. All right. So I believe I'm sharing my screen. Jess and Jen, can you both confirm that you can see it?
Yes.
Yep.
All right, great. So I'll start here. This is the JazzHR platform, which depending on whether or not you're a client or a prospect of JazzHR's, this may or may not look familiar to you. But we're starting here on the candidate page, and we have our candidate Hank Mess. And first thing you'll notice here is this button that says Screen with Verify First. It's pretty much out there saying, hey, if you haven't done this already, let's get this started. And I want to show you, before I go into actually placing an order, how we get that button installed within JazzHR. I think you'll all be pretty pleased to see how easy this process is. So Verified First leverages extensions, which I believe most people are familiar with by now, but it's kind of like downloading an app on your phone, but it's for your desktop. So you have a marketplace depending on the browser that you use, whether it be Chrome, Firefox, Safari, they all have these app marketplaces or extension marketplaces. And within those, you will find Verified First. So we are available on Chrome, New Edge, Firefox, and Safari. And so you can choose whichever browser you're using primarily to install that extension on. I'm using Chrome, so I'm going to go ahead and start there. And that link, which we'll make available to you should you want more information about Verified First, will take you directly to our app listing in the Chrome Web Store. So I already have mine downloaded, and so it says remove from Chrome, but for you, you would see add to Chrome, and when you click that button, the extension will automatically download and be added to your browser toolbar. And from there, for Chrome specifically, something I want to call out because they do have a majority of the market share, I believe, of users, there is an extra step once you download the browser extension. Once it's available, you click on it and it'll ask you to allow additional permissions so that the extension can function correctly within JazzHR. So just a little side note there. But after you're done with that and you hop back into JazzHR, the button will appear for you. And this literally takes 2, 3, maybe 4 minutes at tops to get it downloaded. And then you're integrated. You're literally ready to go. And as long as you've connected with Verified First to get an account set up and login credentials, then you'll be able to start screening right away. So I'll go through that process here now. Through the button, I can place a new order on our candidate here, Hank Mess. And something that I want to call out that goes to that time to fill and making sure that this isn't a huge holdup, something you'll notice is our extension will already populate some of the candidate information into its form so that you're not having to type all this out again, because we know you're probably already doing that by adding candidates in JazzHR. So this is one less thing you have to do is fill out all this information that's already available. We pull that in for you. We have name, last name, we have an email address. We do have to mark whether there's a middle name available and what that is, or if there's none. And then here is where, going to Jessica's point, where you can add a phone number so that you can reach that candidate via text, which drastically decreases the amount of time to get a response on these authorization forms for a background check. So if you're not already collecting cell phone numbers, I highly recommend that you do. And our system will tell you if the phone number they provided is eligible to receive text messages. So just something to mention there. At the top here, what we'll do when we configure your account is we'll work with you on the pricing, we'll work with you on the types of searches that you need for your organization, and that can be broken down by role. So what you'll see here is I'm able to select a position. This could include a C-level executive position. I have an entry-level position here just as an example. Once I choose that, then it'll automatically trigger the package that I have tied to that position. So for an entry-level position, I have a general employment screening package that may include things like a nationwide background check, registered sex offender search, social security address trace. Those are some of the very basic ones. And then from there, you just confirm the information under personal information for the candidate, and you would choose the state that your employment is located, and then you would click on Send Invite. And I wish we had a way to show this, otherwise I'd have to call someone out and ask them to provide their phone number. We can do that on a one-on-one demonstration if you'd like to see what the forms look like coming through on a cell phone. But otherwise, here is where you will choose whether you want to send it via email to the candidate or by text message. So if you want to use both methods, if the phone number and email address is available, go for it. Like I said, in this tight market that we're in and how quickly we need to hire people, as many ways as you can get in front of that candidate to get them through your hiring process, the better. So so you have the options there. In this case, we're just going to go with email. I'm actually going to change this one to my email so that I can show you what those forms look like. All right, so from the hiring professional's perspective, my job is done. I have ordered the background check on Hank Mess. I've made sure the information we had on him was correct, and I know what screens I've ordered on this person, and I've sent the electronic authorization forms to the candidate for them to sign. I'm going to go here, and I'm going to pull up that form so you can see what your candidate will be seeing on their end. Looks like my Wi-Fi slowed down a little bit. All right, so here's the email that your candidate will be receiving when you order the background check on them. So one thing to note is that we can customize this email to include the organization's logo so that it comes across from a company that the candidate is already familiar with. We do realize that if they were to see Verified First, having never known us before, potentially, then they might not be so open to opening up the email and going through the process. However, if they've applied at your organization and they're familiar with the logo, they can see it and they'll say, okay, yeah, I know what this process is. This is definitely something that's part of the hiring process. So let us know and we'll be able to update that for you. And then from there, your candidate will click on the link and they'll get an overview of what's to come, and then they can just simply get started. Now, consent forms are generally the same regardless of where you go when you have a background check run. So most of the stuff I probably won't dive into deep, but I will let you know that they all let the candidate know what it is we're doing, why we're doing it, And if something were to go wrong, such as if there was information on their report that is incorrect, we give them instructions on how to protect themselves from one, and also how to go about correcting it, which we work with the candidate on correcting. And you as the organization will just wait until we do our investigation, make any corrections if needed, and then we'll give you an update on what the changes were, if any. So let me do. Okay. So Hank Mess has been filling out his information here. He is going to be seeking employment in the state of Idaho, but he is currently a resident of Texas based on the information that was provided within JazzHR. Here's a summary of rights under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, which is incredibly important. Okay, so they'll be able to acknowledge that here. And disclosures regarding the background screening. So I'm acknowledging that I've received that disclosure. I'd also like to receive a copy of my consumer report, which I think is a really good thing for candidates to opt in for. I won't be doing that today. Acknowledgement of the background check. I agree. And notice how we have all of this broken out so that the candidate knows exactly what it is they're looking at. The last thing we want is for them to feel overwhelmed with paperwork and have everything running together and they're not really sure what it is they're doing. So that's why we broke everything out. Okay, I'm going to add my social. So this is something that we do encourage the candidate to fill in, even if it is available within an ATS. And the reason why is because it's another way to ensure that the person who received the documents is the person that was meant to receive them. Same thing with the birthday here. Okay, so we'll move forward from there. The address. They will pause here just to confirm that their current address is updated and correct. We'll click next. And then one last glance at everything that they've provided in terms of their personal information to make sure everything looks good before they submit the forms to go back to the organization that they're applying for. So they'll get a nice confirmation here letting them know that the documents have been submitted. And then going back to the organization that's doing the hiring, they will be notified via email that the documents have been completed. And from there, they will be able to go back into JazzHR, and the button that is there on the candidate's profile will let you know exactly what the status is. So in this case, the background check is complete on Hank Mess. I can easily click View Report, so I can take a look at it without having to log into another portal to do so. It's right here in front of me. I'm able to scan, okay, everything looks good. And then from there, I'm able to take my next steps, whether I'm approving Hank Mess for hire, or if there is something that's come back on his report that's negative and goes against the hiring policy, then I can launch the pre-adverse action here, which is the process that informs Hank Mess that there has been something found on his background check that needs further investigation. And then from there, again, we get involved with the candidate to vet out everything and make sure if there's something that needs to be updated or corrected, we make sure to take the time to do so. Okay, and that process can all be electronic as well via email. It doesn't require an in-person thing or anything like that. So it's all very simple and can be done straight from the computer, which in this day and age, I'm sure we can all appreciate. All right, and that is it. So I know I kind of went into detail there, but that is the ordering process from beginning to end. Hopefully that gives you some idea of what the process is that you'd be looking at if you were to integrate Verify First with JazzHR, and what kind of streamlined process that we provide for background screening.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us, Veronica, and for taking the time to go in depth about that, not to an exhaustive level, but to a level where it really provides our viewers here with understanding of what the integration actually looks like in real time between Verified First and JazzHR. So appreciate you walking through that. Can you share with us what next steps would look like for anyone interested in learning more about Verified First and the integration with JazzHR?
Yes. If you're interested in learning more, maybe you want a more in-depth demo or an opportunity to ask questions and talk to one of our consultants, highly recommend that you reach out to us. Let us know that you're using JazzHR so we know exactly how to demonstrate this integration for you again, or answer specific questions that you might have about how we integrate with Jazz. And we'll get you on the line with one of our consultants who can ask you a few questions about what your needs are, what are you curious about. If you don't have a policy in place right now, we're willing to help and let you know what we can provide and how that might help your organization. And then we'll ask you a couple questions about your budget. You know, what do you feel comfortable that you can afford? How can we create a package that'll fall into that? And then we'll be able to provide everything to you. And if it all looks good and you're ready to set up your screening policy, then we'll get your account set up. And as you saw, once you download the extension, you'll be able to log in and start screening right away.
Awesome. Love how streamlined that process is. So thank you, Veronica. We had a couple of questions come in today. And if by chance you do have a question and maybe it's not answered during this, feel free to submit that while we're in our Q&A portion here. If by chance, again, we're not able to get to it today, we will follow up with you after the fact as well. This first question we have here is, what does pricing look like?
That's a great question, and we get that often. So we take more of a consultative approach to pricing, and there's a couple of factors that come into play when it comes to pricing out background screening services. I wish it was as simple as, you know, this is the flat rate and that's it. However, background screening can be a little bit nuanced. So we like to make sure that you're aware of those nuances so that you're not only establishing a background screening policy, but it's also an appropriate one and it's compliant. So compliance is really big in our industry, and we do not want to miss out on the opportunity to explain those things. Those nuances can boil down to your location, what state you're hiring in, what industry you're in. Those types of things will help us better shape that package, that screening package. And from there, we break down each service within it. So whatever product it is that you're interested in, we break it out in a line item quote to let you know exactly what it is. And then from there, you can make the decision on which ones you want. So if you start with a list of 10 products that you're interested in and you want to whittle that down to something else, or if you want to customize your package based on the role, we'll be able to break that out for you. And again, have line items there so you can see exactly what each product costs.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for explaining that. Definitely appreciate it. Another question we got in here today is, how long does it take to get reporting back?
Another great question. So typically, this can depend. It can vary from state to state, right? So some searches, such as verifications, for example, have a human element involved, and so in that case, the turnaround times can vary. But what I can tell you is that in this day and age, a lot of things are starting to be more streamlined and electronic, which is making everyone's job easier. So depending on how many products you have in your package that you're ordering and what types they are, I mean, I could say that turnaround time can average 2 to 3 days, with the caveat that some of them might take a little longer. Now, something that we provide as a benefit and something for our customers to take advantage of are the updates that we provide to you on the ETA for those reports. So, for example, if you have a package of, let's say, 5 products, and let's say you have some verifications in there with that human element involved that I mentioned, and we're having a hard time getting in touch with the employer to verify employment, we will let you know where we're at in the process and also give you an updated ETA on that report. Meanwhile, if other reports have come back, you will have access to view what's available to you. So you're never kept in the dark about what the turnaround time is. If you want even more detail as to the status of your report, you can always reach out to us, and we're happy to hop on the phone and let you know exactly where we're at.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. Yeah, definitely appreciate having that context there. Well, it looks like those are all the questions that we had today. Thank you so much again for everyone who has opted to join us. I know we enjoyed ourselves being able to share that with you, and hopefully, you know, if this is of interest to you, we can come alongside you and support you in your background screening initiatives and efforts, and come to you know, an understanding of what's going to be most beneficial for your organization. So thanks again for joining us. And we do have a quick survey at the end here. If you are interested in learning more about Verified First, that's a great opportunity to let us know. And if you are interested in learning about JazzHR, we also have a question there as well. So we encourage you to take that and just give us some helpful feedback. Well, thank you again, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Thanks, everyone. Bye,
Thanks.
Jen. Bye, Jazz.